Welcome to the Momship Mastery Podcast, the ultimate destination for moms seeking balance, connection, and growth in their journey through motherhood. I'm your host, master's level therapist and life coach, Andrea Baker. Here at the Momship Mastery, we believe that motherhood is a purposeful journey filled with discoveries, challenges, and countless opportunities, from self-care strategies to relationship building, from spiritual growth to parenting insights. I've got you covered. So, if you're ready to embark on this journey with us, hit that subscribe button and let's explore the world of motherhood, relationships, and growth together. Remember, you're not alone on this journey, and we're here to support you every step of the way. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Momship Mastery Podcast. This week we are talking about our kids' mental health and how to understand and navigate those changes. In honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, I wanted to make sure that we touched on different aspects of mental health and different groups of people that we may not initially consider at first. I know that children's mental health has its own awareness month, but I wanted to make sure that I spent some time talking to us about ways that we can help our kids in their mental health. So let's get into it. Mental health really impacts the overall well-being of our kids. When we think about our kids' physical health and making sure that they're eating properly and sleeping properly and going to their routine checkups and things like that, we don't really blink an eye when we think about, oh, we're just doing this because this is what keeps them healthy. But when we consider our kids' mental health and their emotional well-being, there's not as much intentionality sometimes that is attached to the checkups, right? The mental health checkups, right? We know when to do the physical checkups, but not so much. There's really not a guideline of how to check on our kids' mental health from time to time. So when we're thinking about our kids' mental health, we're talking about their overall well-being. How are they doing? What kind of things are happening in their lives. Is really just having that connection and understanding, what's happening with our kids. And when we're thinking about things like that, what are some of the things we're noticing? We may notice that they're super nervous when it comes to maybe talking to people, right? Maybe it's some social anxiety, or maybe they're super hard on themselves and they are in a panic when it comes to taking tests, right? Test anxiety, these types of things, although they may not be to the point where it needs a diagnosis, but these may be symptoms of or behaviors that we're noticing in our children. You may have kids that are like perfectionists, right? That is also linked to anxiety. When we have kids that really push themselves and then really beat up on themselves when they don't do it to their standard, well, these are some of the things that we can start noticing. Okay, we need to pay a little more attention to this, and we need to help them to navigate this, help them to manage this. But points of it is there are a lot of behavioral changes our kids go through depending on their developmental stage. And it's our job as parents to really help our kids navigate those places and helping them to understand what's going on. So today we're going to be talking about understanding kids' mental health, how to notice those behavioral changes, what to look for, and things like that. The third thing we're going to be talking about is how to respond to them, how to help our kids navigate those changes. And then the last thing is going to be if and when we need to seek help for them. So what are some of the signs that this may be becoming a thing that we need to seek outside help for? So that's what we're talking about today. So the first thing is really just our intro to children's mental health. I think it's just a bit more underexposed because often kids don't get as much attention in the mental health field and from parents as we kind of take for ourselves. And that's understandable, right? A lot of times, especially if you're consumed with what's happening with you and you having a really hard time navigating your own mental health, then it makes it even easier to disregard or not notice unintentionally what's going on with our kids. So I wanted to kind of just frame this as at our kids' mental health is the same as looking at their physical health. It's really meaning to enhance their overall well-being, right? We know that to keep our kids healthy, we take them to their routine appointments, we take them to the dentist, the doctor, right? They need these things and they need to make sure that they're eating properly and all these things, right? So it's the same type of things for our kids' mental health, but I just don't think we know how to routinely check on their mental health. How do we routinely check and see if they're emotionally okay? So that's what we're talking about today. So the first thing is really understanding the common issues. What are some of the things that show up in our kids' mental health? And you'll notice like things like symptoms or signs of anxiety, maybe depression, ADHD, and other behavioral changes. These are I guess, the core concepts of our kids' mental health, the things that we kind of will see, the common things you'll hear about in mental health. But another thing I think it's important to consider is also noticing things like bullying and peer pressure and how is their confidence. Like these things are also important to their emotional well-being because they can either be protective factors or they can end up being risk factors of what they're exposed to and what they're allowing in their lives. So that's important to understand and notice and really kind of frame our mind around how do we get them to a place that they're feeling strong and confident in what's happening. When we're noticing behavior changes in our kids, this can be super difficult because we have to consider what's developmentally appropriate, right? Kids are going to have different phases of life where different behaviors will be what we expect from them, right? They get a bit more moody at a certain age. They get a bit more conflictual, I guess people would say, at a certain age. There are certain things that will come up at certain ages. They'll want to ask more questions, right? They may seem like they're testing the bounds a little bit more when they're really just kind of pushing for that autonomy. So we want to really be able to consider what's happening and figure out if this is developmentally appropriate for them, is this normal behaviors, or is this uncharacteristic of my child? So this again goes back to noticing is this my kid or is this something different? Example, like my daughter's always been the one to ask questions. She wants an explanation, right? Sometimes I take my time and explain things in a certain way that helps to soothe the questions and the anxiousness that sometimes I see coming out of her. There are other times where she's doing something that's not characteristic of her. My son is characteristically calm, like he's very calm mannered. He's playful, he's laughs, and he does all these things. But for the most part, he's pretty calm. He's not really anxious. He doesn't really worry too much. He lets things go like they go and things like that. Developmentally, he gets upset. He fusses with his sister and all these things. But for the most part, he's pretty calm. So when I notice behaviors that are uncharacteristic, where he's super anxious or he has a moment where he's super fearful and he's ruminating over it, then I have to take notice of that and we have to take the steps to help him manage that and just recognizing those changes. And while it's normal for kids to experience the ups and downs of certain behaviors, we have to look for the signs of distress, right? When are they in distress? And that's when we know to look for major changes in their behavior. Are there major changes in their sleep patterns, in their appetite? Are they eating more? Are they eating less? Are they worried about their weight and how other people see them, right? We have to make sure that it's not spiraling into an eating disorder. Are people bullying them about their weight? Is this causing internal discomfort to where they're refusing to eat, right? A lot of these happen starting off with emotion. A lot of disorders start with emotional dysregulations and things like that. And then looking at their social interaction. Are they a super social person? Have they started to not be social? Have they started to isolate themselves? Have they began to just be at home all the time when they used to like to hang out with friends? Or now are they hanging out with a lot of people that's uncharacteristic of who they hang out with, right? We have to kind of notice these things and really be able to navigate them and help our kids to understand what's going on while we're also keeping ourselves regulated. And so let's get into the navigating part because that's one of the most important things is how do we help our kids navigate this? Well, first thing we do is we normalize it and we allow it. We normalize what they're feeling, right? You're feeling upset, you're feeling mad, you're feeling angry, you're afraid, right? Help them to give a name to it. That means we have to manage our own reactions. We have to manage our own expectations of how they're supposed to feel, right? We have to keep ourselves from telling them how they should feel and listening to what they're telling us about their feelings. So normalizing what they're feeling. If they're feeling upset and we feel like they shouldn't be, that's on us. We have to allow them the space to say, yeah, I'm feeling upset, and help them have the language to explain that. We want to help them to process that emotion instead of telling them to feel something else and expecting them to just push it away, because that creates that unhealthy habit of masking. We want to make sure that they're able to disclose and feel safe to feel what they're feeling. We want to help them to communicate and express that, right? We're also helping them to get language, because a lot of times they don't know. They don't know what this feeling is, right? They're new to this. A lot of times when they're feeling super anxious for the first time, they don't know what that is. It feels like a knot in their stomach. It feels like afraid. It feels like tension. They may have headaches. They may have stomach aches, right? If they're telling you that I don't feel good, and it's not because, they ate something bad or something else is going around, and you notice like, okay, we've checked all these boxes, but they're still saying they have a headache. They're still saying their stomach is in knots. Like, let's explore how you're feeling. And they're going to be like, what? Depending on their age, right? They're going to have different questions. So why you're asking this, but when we're exploring and helping them to identify their emotions, I always ask, well, what did you feel like? When was the last time you didn't feel this? Right? When did this start? When did your stomach start hurting? On my way to school. Hmm. What's happening at school today? You know, what type of things are what do you like to do at school? What don't you like to do? Well, I don't like school at all. Right? So we start asking questions about, when did this symptom start? What is surrounding the symptom? Is the knot in your stomach because you have a certain group of people that you have to be around today, and you're nervous about being around them? Is it because you don't want to go to a place that you have to go to, right? So we want to really help them to navigate that and put words to that, and help them to understand and have the language to process those things. Depending on the age of the kids, sometimes I use faces, like the emotional face cards, because a lot of times, again, like, they don't have the language. Even I use these emotional face cards probably up into middle school, because they don't know what it's called. They don't know, they just know how it feels. They know what it looks like. So if I can put it outside of them, right? If I can externalize it for them and put it on someone else, then it's easier for them to recognize it. Then they're more easily able to identify it, because they're not trying to protect what they feel like they have to protect within themselves. Yeah, so modeling, if we want them to regulate their emotions and they already can't even identify them, then we also have to model the emotional regulation. We have to show them how to understand the emotion, how to identify the emotion, and then how to regulate the emotion. We don't want to get them to a point where they feel like we just need to make the emotion go away. We don't want to just dispose of it or just get rid of it. We want to help them to manage it, because there's not a world where no emotions will exist, right? There's not a world where we can stop these feelings from coming. We can only figure out how to manage them, how to ride the wave, how to make our peace with it and get through it. So one of the easiest and most impactful ways for us to teach our kids this is to model it. So when we are having our emotions and we are having moments of distress and things like that, it's okay to have those moments in front of our kids if we are able to also show them how we're regulating ourselves, how we're deep breathing, how we're calming ourselves. What are we saying to ourselves, right? How you are able to calm yourself is a model for your kids. The way you respond to emotions is going to be the way they respond to emotion. We can tell them one thing, but they're going to do what they see us do. This is why we have a lot of kids that have high anxiety, and you look at their parents and their parents also have high anxiety, because that's become a learned thing. We're able to learn how to process, how to respond to emotions. Yeah, but I'll talk about that in another episode. So yeah, and then teaching them skills to calm themselves, right? Researching emotional regulation skills and or coping skills and things like that, and just helping them and you guys working on that together. And then lastly, when do you need to seek help for your child? When should you consider seeking help for your child? Emotions are normal. We're going to experience a lot of them, right? And if we are working to regulate them and we're working on the skills to handle them and to communicate them, and we're trying to teach them all these things, and then we see that the behaviors are either worsening or they're becoming persistent, right? The highs and the lows are becoming more frequent. When you feel like it's uncontrollable or you feel like it's very uncharacteristic and you don't feel like there is a way for you to handle it, or you feel like this is overwhelming for them and you're overwhelmed, then it might be a good idea to seek help from either their school counselor. Usually your school counselor has some referrals for a therapist, but if not, then searching that specialize in helping children and adolescents so that they're able to have a space that they feel they can learn to express themselves. And that way you feel more confident that they're being helped and that it's not overtaking them and they're able to learn to manage these things. And then if a mental illness or a diagnosis that's present, that therapist or that psychologist will be able to notice those things and then take the necessary steps to help get that child the proper treatment that they need. It's not, none of these things are permanent, right? Emotions, they come and go. Sometimes even diagnoses, right, you learn how to manage them. So I don't want you to feel that, oh my gosh, my child may have anxiety or my child may be depressed and this is a lifelong thing. It's not. This is something that we can take on early. We can teach them how to navigate it. We can teach them how to understand it, how to ride the waves, how to do that in a way that they are able to function well, right? They have a greater sense of well-being and a greater sense of wellness, and they're able to just handle these things in a way that feels good to them. You also want to seek help if your child is showing any signs of self-harming thoughts or self-harming behaviors, where they're thinking about it or talking about it or drawing about it. Um, we want to take note of these things very quickly because we don't ever want to miss any signs that may be prevalent that the child is in a crisis, right? So we want to take notice of these things. So that's all I have for today. The next couple episodes will probably talk about how do we notice anxiety and depression in our children, and how do we respond to those specific things, because those are some of the things that I know come up most often. But this was just a general, how do we notice our kids' mental health and how do we respond and help them through that? So I hope it's helpful. I know it's short. I hope it's short and sweet and to the point. But yeah, I hope that it's helpful, and we'll see you next week. That's all for today, and I hope that you're feeling inspired to navigate your shifts with grace and authenticity. If you enjoyed this episode, I want you to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a mom who may just need a little support and encouragement. Don't forget to connect with us on social media. We are on Instagram and Facebook at Momship Mastery, and those links are also in the show notes. Before we go, here's my little reminder. You are an incredible mom, and you have the power to nurture your inner well-being and create meaningful connections and relationships. Embrace the journey, cherish the moments, and continue to thrive in your momship journey. Until next